I can start. I don't need, we are a very close group. I was under the impression that there are only 4 kids with 4H syndrome in the UK, but just now came to know there are 6. So by no means, is it? Am I 5? Okay. So we want to understand this condition better, and let me. You guys know more than clinician from 4H side of things. A lot of these rare conditions, parents, they come and tell us that something new is happening. Have you explored? And that's how my journey in leukodystrophy started a long time ago. The child is still here, and that's how I came in contact with few people abroad, including Amy Waldman at Philadelphia, and that's how things started. So it's not a one-way journey where I'm going to talk about the science of it and then talk about the genetic conditions. So there is a long history to it. Correct me if I am wrong. It's a 4H syndrome, hypomyelination, hypodontia, hypogonadotrophic gonadism. So doesn't have, this was the historical description of this condition. Hypomyelination, so in our brain, imagine our brain is like electric wire, raw electric wire, millions of them in cable connected to each other. They form a small circuit, they form a bigger circuit, and they talk to each other. And there are numerous circuits in the brain. So our nerve cells has a head, body, tail, and the body of the nerve cells, they get a covering on that, which is called myelin. That keeps your nerve cell strong, that keeps your nerve cell fast, and that's how one cell talk to other cell, and this network is developed in the brain throughout. The way the covering of these nerve cells is called myelination. That process at the time of birth, there are very limited structures in the brain which are myelinated, but as you grow older, these myelin get stronger and stronger, and that is reflected on the MRI scan. If you have less myelin, it's called hypomyelination. If myelin was there, getting destroyed, you start calling them different types of leukodystrophy. So the bad white matter is not functioning as it should be functioning. Not all of them will deteriorate at the same pace. Some disease course can be stable for a long period of time. They will have a period where things are better, things are good, not so better. So they follow different patterns. So if you look at our brain, this is at the embryonic stage, very early stage of your brain development. And myelin is formed by a cell called oligodendrocyte. I'm trying to show you the timeline, how it starts forming. It starts forming in 8 weeks of in utero, in the embryonic stage. From there it becomes a bit more mature in the stem cell stage, then gets into the baby oligodendrocytes, OPC, then gets into better oligodendrocytes, and then the mature one. So if you see the description of it, at every stage there are stage-specific signaling process happening, stage-specific proteins are there, stage-specific antigens are there. So things can go wrong at any of these stages for your oligodendrocyte to not mature as expected and give rise to problem in the myelination. And if myelination is affected, depending upon which structure is included, you start getting symptoms. So once myelin is formed, even for adult people, for us, everyone, there is a mechanism in the body which keeps your nerve cell strong. So there is a pathway, so there are certain conditions which starts at a later age, not in the immediate when you are born. So there is a variation. That's why there are a lot of white matter conditions. We see that they appear in the adult onset white matter diseases. And these are some special cells in the brain. The green one, what you're seeing is astrocytes. Astrocytes are the cell which helps one nerve talk to the another nerve. They keep it nice and strong. And then there is another cell, what you see is called microglia. This is like cleaning cells. It is, if your brain is, there's some debris collected around your brain, microglia will come and try to clean them up. And there are a lot of blood vessels which supplies nutrition to these structures in the brain. So any problem where astrocytes are not functioning properly, or your cleaning mechanism is not very good, or the blood vessels which provides nourishment to these cells, they are not good, they can also cause problem with the white matter diseases. So there's so many different things where the white matter can get affected. Now coming specifically to this condition, 4H syndrome, my understanding is you don't need to have 4H, you can have 2H, you can have 0H, you don't need to have hypomyelination, you don't need to have hypodontia. So basically what our body does, we have DNA, which has all the genetic codes. That DNA needs to be converted into RNA, which is the process is called transcription. So there are different types of RNAs, which give like messenger RNA, transfer RNA, ribosomal RNA. And when the DNA forms RNA, there are a lot of RNA which gets converted into protein. They're called coding RNAs. And there are a lot of non-coding RNAs as well. And it is not that simple. There are different structures of ribosomal RNA, messenger RNA. So it is packed into a very complex structure. And these RNA will form a protein. Proteins are the enzymes. What you get for 4H syndrome, this is RNA polymerase enzyme. So we have 3 forms of polymerase enzyme in the body: polar 1, polar 2, polar 3. They're basically housekeeping gene. They keep your homeostasis, the way your cell functions, strong, and keep the protein levels at the right level, and it can affect, depending upon which organ has requirement for those housekeeping protein, your manifestations will be there. So one of my patients, which I inherited from my colleagues since the service started, they were seen in 2010-11. They had a diagnosis of 4H syndrome, but there was no genetics at that time. It's relatively new gene. Gene started coming up in 2013, 2014, 2015, I think 2014 and 15. So this is very new condition. And when you look at the polymerase type 3, they transcribe into diverse different types of RNAs, and they have got 17 subunit and microsomal RNA and transfer RNA. So ribosome is an important structure in the nucleolus of our in our cell that helps them transport these proteins and make them functional. So polymerase R, polymerase 3, there are 3 subunits like 3A, 3B, and it's a complex. If you look at the structure of these genes, there are different subunits. Like polymerase 3 has 17 subunits, polymerase 1 has certain subunits, and there are some overlapping units. So dysfunction in pol R3A has been described, 3B has been described, and even in polymerase type 1C, where you have an overlapping phenotype. So all of them have been described with, if you look at the complex structure, which I struggle to understand, but it's your nuclear DNA getting converted into protein, and extranuclear cytosolic DNA also getting converted into protein. So basically what it is, you have a spelling mistake in the gene, which is not, transcription is affected, there is a reduced expression of the specific gene, and this is a hypomorphic condition. The less protein you have, more problem you will have. It is very important gene. If you don't have this RNA polymerase enzyme, you won't survive. So there will be some level of this enzyme in your system. Some, on experimental basis, they sometimes measure these enzymes, but clinically that is not being used. So it's a hypomorphic gene, less protein, more dysfunction. And what has happened over time is that people have, since 2014, first time the gene was picked up, now there are different phenotypes. That happens with the new gene. Your phenotype starts expanding. You see something which is presenting very early at the age to very late onset problem. So this is an MRI scan. You see this is first two column belongs to one patient and the other one is another patient. Can you see the arrows? So this is D2 weighted images, and you see normally myelin should appear black. Here what you see is less myelin. And as the cerebellum looks a bit small and the corpus callosum looks a bit thin. So these are the described phenotype on MRI scan. So if we see a child where there is developmental delay, there is a problem with cerebellar functioning, get an MRI scan, we get to know about the myelination status, then think about the genetic condition and we do the genetic testing. This is the latest, and Genevieve and Nicole, they have worked on this condition. They have dedicated their time for this condition, and this is, as you see, there is a lot of genotype-phenotype correlation, and POLR3 related leukodystrophies, they are finding different subunits of RNA polymerase 3 enzymes, which can give rise to problem with the myelin, problem with the teeth. You don't have to have hypodontia. The teeth can be a bit unusual shaped as well. You can have anodontia. You might not have any teeth problem. And it is expressed in your endocrine system, where it can affect your growth. It can affect other endocrine function, including insulin problem, problem with your glucose metabolism as well. So, and growth will be affected. Eyes, they are important. Initial, before the genetic diagnosis, a lot of conditions where they found hypomyelination and cataract. And that is also described with these conditions. So, and what does that mean to me when I see someone where we suspect we have a genetic confirmation? We want to make sure that their hormone system is fine, eyes look okay, bones are fine, because if your hormones are not at that level, your bone growth will be affected. Bone growth will cause secondary problem with your growth, curving of spine, and other things. So what they need is a very good multidisciplinary team. I will come to that. So now what we see is an expanding spectrum of POLR3 related leukodystrophy. We diagnose that. You don't need to have leukodystrophy or hypomyelination. If you have very less, no enzyme, it's very severe. They can start at an embryo. They might not survive. But typical onset is in the childhood or toddler stage, and adult onset, they can have a milder phenotype, which we are seeing with a lot of these white matter disorder that they present in old age with hereditary spastic paraparesis. These are some of the syndromes described since the gene was found. They can have unusual looking face, and this is the severe form of this condition, Wiedemann-Rotenstrauch syndrome, neonatal progeria, like they look very old when they are born with skin changes and bone problem, and other conditions which we have talked about. One interesting thing, what I found, child had a severe chickenpox infection, and they're looking into it, that does it affect your immune system as well? Recurrent chickenpox, bad chickenpox. So definitely there was a case with severe chickenpox infection. And the cognitive phenotype has been described where attention deficit, that there is learning difficulties and other cognitive phenotypes as well. I just put these slides here, but I feel your child's genetic mutation is unique to your child. I can't predict based on one child's condition that next one with the same mutation is going to behave in this the same way. That's what I was saying. Your journey is going to be different, and how, as a team, we can help you. So genetic distribution of these genetic things based on literature, I think most of the studies were done in US. So you see most reporting were done from there, then the European countries, and there is some sort of POLR3A is more common in French Canadian population, POLR3B is more common in European population. We have our patients, that's why I want to see all our 6 patients and see what sort of mutation they have got. And it's an autosomal recessive condition, so both parents will be obligate carriers. So it has to be, there has to be problem on both the alleles of the gene. And genetic counseling is an important part of moving forward what we do for them. So some of these cognitive behavioral manifestation, attention deficit, emotional ability, and this is not unique to for H. I would say it is unique. It can be seen in other white matter diseases as well. We mentioned about when we see someone, we need to make sure they have seen a pediatric endocrinologist, their growth hormone is assessed, thyroid function is assessed, insulin and adrenal insufficiency. And diagnostic criteria is standard for as we do, and this is the most important thing. One person can't manage. We need a proper multidisciplinary care, and neurologist needs to be part of it, but there are other people as well. So at this stage, there is no definitive management. It is difficult to develop an animal model with this gene. The ones they have tried, they were embryonically, they survived. So they're trying to develop some animal model and try some new medicine, but currently the treatment is mostly supportive and symptomatic. And even lifespan is quite, you can't predict this person is going to have this thing. If you control, prevent them from developing complications, they can have a very good quality of life. So, and I'm not aware of any new therapies happening, but I know a lot of work has been there, and we are there to support you. Tell us, Alex TLC, any child I see, I guide them to Alex TLC, or sometimes it comes other way around. You guys have met Yaya Foundation, they're doing great work. And I did meet with them as well, and you are there. And this is where Alex TLC contacted